like myself, a lot of us have been asking, with all of these indictments that have come down, why hasn't Roger Stone been charged with anything yet? Why hasn't he been indicted for anything yet? To give you some background, because he's neck deep in the fake elector stuff, and I'll talk about in a second in the January 6th stuff as well. Roger Stone has known Donald Trump for more than 40 years. He's very famous for, in the top center of his back, having a tattoo of the face of Richard Nixon. In the late 70s and through the 80s, Roger Stone was partners in a lobbying firm in Washington, D.C. that had a reputation for lobbying the United States government on behalf of some of the other worst governments in the world. Dictators, despots, all of that stuff. His two partners in that firm were Paul Manafort, who went on to become Donald Trump's campaign manager and was convicted of multiple felonies before he was pardoned by Donald Trump. Their other partner was a guy named Lee Atwater, who was a Republican operative and was instrumental in George H.W. Bush's presidential campaign in the late 80s. And he was famous for coming up with and running the Willie Horton ad against Michael Dukakis. Roger Stone was convicted of felonies during the Mueller probe, and he was pardoned by Donald Trump. And he gained a lot of notoriety in the year 2000 as part of George W. Bush's campaign, an unofficial part, because he coordinated what became known as the Brooks Brothers riot in Florida, when all these white guys in suits demanded that the votes stopped being counted so that George W. Bush would win the state of Florida. There's a new documentary out about him called A Storm Foretold. I've seen clips of it on TikTok. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know where it's streaming. But he's very clearly in that documentary pushing the fake elector scheme within a couple of days before Election Day, before the votes had even stopped being counted, before Joe Biden had even been declared the winner. There's another documentary on Netflix about him called Get Me Roger Stone. In the first documentary, he's heard very clearly, shortly after Election Day, acknowledging that Donald Trump lost the election, that it wasn't stolen. He was never officially a part of Trump's campaign, either one of his campaigns. He never had a job in the White House. Now, in Washington, D.C., in the days leading up to January 6th, there was a war room of a lot of these folks working out of a conference room in the Willard Hotel, which is right across the street from the White House. That war room included people like Steve Bannon, Bernie Kerik, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, General Michael Flynn, and Roger Stone. And we still know very little about what was going on in that room during those days. But they were plotting and scheming to keep Donald Trump in power beyond Inauguration Day, 2021. And so Stone was in D.C. for a week or two before January 6th. He was also in D.C. on December 11th when there was a first Stop the Steal rally, and which quickly became violent. A bunch of Proud Boys ended up just roaming the streets, beating the shit out of people. He was in D.C. for that one as well. During the January 6th committee hearings, Cassidy Hutchins, who was assistant to White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, testified that on January 5th, the day before the insurrection at the Capitol, Donald Trump instructed Mark Meadows to call Roger Stone in the war room at the Willard Hotel. Mark Meadows originally was going to go over there in person, but he was busy. So he called Roger Stone, and then after that, he also, at Trump's instruction, placed a call to General Michael Flynn. With all of that smoke around Roger Stone, as I said at the beginning, it's been kind of stunning to me that of all the people who have been criminally indicted in these cases, that Roger Stone hasn't been one of them. And I think a lot of us share that feeling. All I can say is that Jack Smith is not done, and there's always hope. So keep your fingers crossed.